Tom woke up to the soft rays of sunlight streaming through the window. His tiny apartment was quiet, except for the faint hum of the city outside. As usual, his cat Benny was curled up on the chair by the window, enjoying the morning warmth. Tom stretched, groaning as he reluctantly got out of bed. Another day, another struggle with learning English, he thought. Tom had moved to a bustling city in hopes of better opportunities, but he quickly realized how much his lack of English held him back. He relied on translation apps and gestures, but it was exhausting and often embarrassing. He shuffled to the kitchen, preparing his usual cup of coffee. As he sipped, he glanced at Benny, who now sat upright, his green eyes fixed on Tom. "You've got it easy," Tom muttered to the cat. "You don't need to speak or understand anything." Benny tilted his head, as if pondering the statement. Tom sighed and opened his English workbook. The previous night's page was still marked a list of words he had tried to memorize but couldn't retain. He read aloud, "Cable, chair, window, why is this so hard?" Suddenly, Benny leaped onto the table, startling Tom. The cat stared at him intently, his tail swishing back and forth. Tom laughed nervously. "What are you going to help me now?" To Tom's shock, Benny nodded. Tom blinked, shaking his head. "I must still be half asleep," he muttered. "No, you're not," Benny said, his voice calm and steady. Tom froze, the coffee cup slipping from his hand and clattering onto the table. Did you just talk?" "Yes," Benny replied, licking his paw as if this were the most natural thing in the world. Tom stared at the cat, his mouth agape. "Cats don't talk." "Usually no," Benny admitted, "but I'm not just any cat. And you, Tom, need help." Tom sank into his chair, still unable to process what was happening. This can't be real." Benny jumped onto Tom's lap, his emerald eyes locking with Tom's. "Do you want to learn English or not?" Tom stammered, Yes, but then let me help you." Benny interrupted. "I'll teach you everything you need to know. Trust me." Tom shook his head, still dazed. "This is insane. Cats don't talk. You're a hallucination or some weird dream." "Think what you want," Benny said with a shrug, "but I'm real, and you need me." Tom hesitated, but deep down, he knew Benny was right. If this bizarre situation could help him finally overcome his struggles with English, why not give it a chance? "All right," Tom said, still skeptical. "Where do we start?" Benny hopped off his lap and onto the table, his tail swishing with purpose. "First, we start with the basics. Follow me." Tom followed Benny to the living room, his mind spinning with questions. How was this happening? Why him? But as he watched Benny point his paw toward a chair and say, "This is a chair," he realized there was no turning back. Tom hesitated, staring at the chair Benny had just pointed to. "This is a chair," Benny repeated, his voice patient but firm. Tom blinked a few times, still trying to grasp the reality of the situation. "Okay, this is a chair," he echoed. "Good," Benny said with a slight nod. "Now, what is this?" He padded over to the table and placed his paw on it. Tom cleared his throat. This is a table." "Excellent," Benny exclaimed, his tail curling with approval. "You see, it's not as hard as you think. You just need to associate the words with what you see." Tom gave a hesitant nod. "I guess, but remembering everything is where I mess up." Benny jumped onto the table, his green eyes locking with Tom's. That's because you're trying to learn too much at once. Focus on a few words at a time and practice them until they stick. Tom sighed, but decided to trust his feline teacher. All right, what's next? Benny pointed to the coffee mug still sitting on the table. This is a cup. Say it. This is a cup, Tom repeated, glancing at the mug. Now, let's make it a little harder, Benny said with a sly grin. He hopped down and gestured toward the window. What is this? Tom hesitated. He had seen the word before, but couldn't quite remember it. It's a glass? No, Benny corrected, shaking his head. It's a window. Say it with me. This is a window. This is a window, Tom said, feeling a small flicker of accomplishment. Benny's tail swished as he continued. Perfect. Now let's put them together. Say, this is a chair, this is a table, this is a cup, and this is a window. Tom took a deep breath and repeated the sentence slowly, feeling the words start to flow. See? You're already improving, Benny said, his voice tinged with pride. Tom couldn't help but smile. I guess it's not so bad when you take it step by step. Benny nodded approvingly. Exactly. And don't be afraid to practice out loud. Hearing yourself speak helps you remember. Over the next few minutes, Benny guided Tom around the apartment, pointing out other objects and teaching him their names. This is a book, Benny said, tapping a hardcover novel on the shelf. This is a book, Tom repeated. This is a lamp, Benny continued, gesturing toward the light on the desk. This is a lamp, Tom echoed, his confidence growing with each repetition. By the time they finished, Tom had learned a dozen new words and was starting to feel a bit more comfortable. All right, Benny said, hopping back onto the chair by the window. That's enough for today. Remember, consistency is key. Review these words tomorrow, and we'll add more to your list. Tom sat down, feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and excitement. I still can't believe my cat is teaching me English, he muttered, shaking his head. Believe it, Benny said with a smirk, and get some rest. Tomorrow we'll move on to phrases. As Tom lay in bed that night, he replayed the day's events in his mind. The words he had learned, chair, table, cup, window, seemed to echo in his thoughts. For the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope about mastering the language. The next morning, Tom woke up feeling more optimistic than he had in weeks. The previous day's lesson with Benny had been surreal, but it had also been surprisingly effective. He could still picture each object and recall its English name: chair, table, cup, window. As he stepped into the living room, he found Benny perched on the back of the couch, his green eyes sharp and alert. Good morning, Tom, Benny said smoothly. Ready for today's lesson? Tom chuckled. I'm still not used to hearing you talk, but yeah, I'm ready. Good, Benny replied, hopping down to the floor. Today we're going to explore the house. You'll learn the names of different rooms and the objects inside them. Follow me. Tom followed Benny to the kitchen where the lesson began. This, Benny said, pointing with his paw, is the kitchen. Say it with me. This is the kitchen. This is the kitchen, Tom repeated, looking around at the cabinets, the stove, and the sink. And here, Benny continued, patting the countertop, is a counter. This is a counter. This is a counter, Tom echoed. Benny then pointed to the fridge. This is a refrigerator. Or you can simply say fridge. Tom repeated the words, feeling a little more confident with each one. Good. Now name 3 things you see in the kitchen, Benny instructed. Tom hesitated, scanning the room. A counter, a fridge, and a sink? Exactly. Benny said, his tail swishing approvingly. Now let's move to the next room. The pair walked into the living room. Benny leapt onto the couch and gestured around. This is the living room. Say it. This is the living room, Tom said, noting the furniture and decorations. Here, Benny said, pointing to the sofa, is a couch. Some people call it a sofa. Either one works. This is a couch, Tom said, nodding. Benny pointed next to the small table in front of the couch. This is a coffee table. This is a coffee table, Tom repeated, feeling his vocabulary grow with each step. They continued through the house, entering Tom's bedroom next. This is the bedroom, Benny announced. Say it. This is the bedroom, Tom said, looking at his unmade bed and cluttered desk. Here's a bed, Benny said, jumping onto it. And over there is a desk. This is a bed. This is a desk, Tom repeated, trying to commit the words to memory. Benny then walked toward the window, where the sunlight streamed through. What is this? He asked, testing Tom's memory. It's a window, Tom replied with a grin. Correct. See, you're already improving, Benny said, clearly pleased. The last stop was the bathroom. Benny pointed to the sink and the mirror. This is the bathroom, and here are the sink and the mirror. Say it. This is the bathroom. This is the sink. This is the mirror, Tom repeated, glancing at his reflection. By the time they finished, Tom had not only learned the names of the rooms in his apartment, but also several key objects in each. Benny seemed impressed with his progress. You did well today, Benny said as they returned to the living room. The more you associate these words with what you see, the easier it will be to remember them. Tom smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment. Thanks, Benny. This is actually starting to make sense. Good, Benny replied. Tomorrow we'll start learning how to ask questions. But for now, review what we covered today. Consistency is key, Tom. As Tom sat down to jot down the words and phrases in his notebook, he couldn't help but feel grateful for his unusual teacher. He had no idea how or why Benny could talk, but for the first time, learning English didn't feel like an impossible task. The next morning, Tom was ready for whatever Benny had planned. He had spent the previous evening reviewing the words and phrases they had covered, and he felt a new sense of confidence brewing. Benny was already waiting for him in the living room, sitting atop the coffee table like a professor preparing for a lecture. Good morning, Tom, Benny said with a nod. Good morning, Benny, Tom replied, smiling. I see you're getting the hang of greetings, Benny remarked. Today we're moving on to something just as important, asking questions. Knowing how to ask questions will open up so many possibilities for you in English. Let's start with something simple. Tom nodded eagerly. I'm ready. Benny hopped down from the table and padded over to a nearby lamp. What is this? He asked, gesturing with his paw. Tom thought for a moment before answering. It's a lamp. Good, Benny said. Now repeat after me. What is this? What is this? Tom repeated, mimicking Benny's inflection. Perfect. This phrase is very useful when you don't know the name of something. Let's try it with other objects. Benny moved to the couch. What is this? Tom answered confidently. It's a couch. Excellent, Benny exclaimed. Now try asking me a question. Tom hesitated for a moment before pointing to the coffee table. What is this? Benny grinned. This is a coffee table. See? You're already getting it. Over the next few minutes, they went around the room, with Tom practicing the question and answering as Benny pointed to various objects. When they returned to the kitchen, Benny introduced a new question. Now let's try this. Where is? This question is useful when you're looking for something. For example, where is the cup? Tom repeated. Where is the cup? Benny pointed to the counter. The cup is on the counter. Now you try. Tom scanned the room and asked, where is the fridge? Benny walked over to it and tapped it with his paw. The fridge is here. They practiced this new question several times, with Tom growing more comfortable as he repeated the structure. He even began forming complete sentences in response, which earned him an approving nod from Benny. Very good, Tom, Benny said. Let's make it a bit harder now. Try combining the two questions. For example, you could say, what is this? And where is the... Tom scratched his head, thinking. He pointed to the sink and asked, what is this? And where is the soap? Benny looked pleased. This is the sink, and the soap is next to it. Excellent work, Tom grinned, feeling a sense of accomplishment. This is actually kind of fun. That's because you're starting to see the results, Benny said. The more you practice, the easier it gets. Now, let's take a short break before reviewing everything we've learned so far. Tom sat down at the kitchen table, scribbling notes in his notebook. He couldn't believe how much he had learned in just a few days. The phrases and words that once seemed so daunting were now beginning to feel like second nature. Benny jumped onto the chair next to him and watched as Tom wrote. Tomorrow we'll add some action verbs to your vocabulary. For now, keep practicing these questions. They're the foundation for many conversations. Tom nodded, his confidence growing with every lesson. He didn't know what Benny had in store for him next, but he was ready to find out. The following morning, Tom found Benny sitting by the window, gazing out at the small garden below their apartment. The morning sun highlighted the lush, green plants, and a soft breeze carried the scent of flowers. Good morning, Tom, Benny greeted as Tom approached. Good morning, Benny, Tom replied, now used to their routine. What's on today's agenda? Today we're taking a trip to the garden, Benny announced. It's time to expand your vocabulary with nature-related words. Grab your notebook and follow me. Tom grabbed his notebook, and they headed outside. Benny trotted ahead, his tail swishing with purpose. When they reached the garden, Benny stopped near a patch of vibrant flowers. These, Benny said, pointing with his paw, are flowers. Say it with me. These are flowers. These are flowers, Tom repeated, admiring the bright reds, yellows, and purples. Good. Now this, Benny continued, pointing to a tall tree nearby, is a tree. Say it. This is a tree, Tom echoed, feeling the bark under his fingers. Benny led him to a bush full of small white blossoms. And this is a bush. This is a bush, Tom said, jotting down the words in his notebook. Now let's try something more descriptive, Benny said. What color are the flowers? They're red and yellow. And purple, Tom answered, hesitating slightly as he pieced the sentence together. Exactly, Benny said with a grin. Colors are an important part of describing things. Let's practice with the tree. What color are the leaves? Tom thought for a moment. They're green. Perfect. And how about the trunk of the tree? It's brown, Tom said, smiling as the words came more easily. Benny nodded approvingly. You're doing well. Now, let's learn some action verbs. Watch this. Benny pretended to dig in the soil with his paw. This is called to dig. Repeat after me. To dig. To dig, Tom repeated, watching Benny's demonstration. Benny moved to a small watering can. This is called to water. When you give plants water, you say, I am watering the plants. Say it. I am watering the plants, Tom repeated, feeling the rhythm of the sentence. Now it's your turn, Benny said, pointing to a garden spade nearby. Use to dig in a sentence. Tom hesitated before saying, I am digging in the garden. Excellent, Benny said. And how about using to water? I am watering the flowers, Tom replied, growing more confident. The lesson continued as Benny introduced more nature-related vocabulary, including grass, sky, and clouds. He even tested Tom by asking questions like, what is this? And what color is it? By the end of their time in the garden, Tom had learned not only new words, but also how to describe what he saw and perform basic actions. As they headed back to the apartment, Benny turned to Tom. You did great today. Nature is full of things to learn, and you picked it up quickly. Thanks, Benny, Tom said, genuinely proud of himself. I never thought learning English could be this fun. Tomorrow, Benny said as they reached the door, we'll see how well you remember today's lesson with a little game. Be ready, Tom nodded, feeling both excited and a little nervous. Benny's lessons were unconventional, but they were working. For the first time, he felt like learning English was something he could actually do. The next day, Tom woke up with a mix of anticipation and curiosity. Benny had promised a game, and Tom was eager to see what his feline teacher had in store. When he walked into the living room, Benny was already waiting, sitting upright on the coffee table with an air of importance. Good morning, Tom, Benny said, his voice carrying a playful tone. Good morning, Benny, Tom replied, setting his notebook on the table. What's the plan for today? Today we're going to play a game of riddles, Benny announced. I'll describe something, and you'll have to guess what it is using the words and phrases you've learned so far. Tom smiled. Sounds fun. Let's do it. Benny cleared his throat dramatically, as if preparing for a grand performance. All right, here's your first riddle. I am tall and green, and my leaves make a sound in the wind. What am I? Tom thought for a moment, visualizing the garden from the previous day. You're a tree. Correct. Benny said, his tail swishing with approval. Now here's another. I can be red, yellow, or purple. I grow in the garden, and I smell sweet. What am I? Tom grinned. A flower. Excellent, Benny replied. You're off to a great start. Let's make it a bit harder. Benny walked over to the kitchen and gestured toward the counter. I'm in the kitchen. I keep things cold, and you open my door to find food. What am I? Tom hesitated for a moment before answering. The fridge? Exactly, Benny exclaimed. See? You're getting the hang of this. The riddles continued, each one slightly more challenging than the last. Benny described objects from around the house and garden, prompting Tom to recall their names and practice using descriptive language. I am soft, and you sit on me in the living room. What am I? Benny asked, pacing in front of the couch. You're a couch, Tom replied confidently. Correct again, Benny said. Now for a tricky one. I'm blue or white, and I float above the trees. Sometimes I block the sun. What am I? Tom furrowed his brow, thinking back to the garden. A cloud? Exactly, Benny said, nodding. You're doing better than I expected. After a few more riddles, Benny decided to raise the stakes. Now I'll describe something, and you have to ask me a question about it. For example, if I say, I am in the kitchen, and I hold water, you could ask, what color is it? Or where is it? Tom nodded, ready for the challenge. Benny gave his next clue. I am in the garden, and I help plants grow. What am I? Tom thought for a moment before asking, where is it? It's next to the flowers, Benny replied. Oh, it's a watering can, Tom guessed. Perfect, Benny said, his eyes gleaming with pride. The game continued until Tom had guessed a dozen objects and practiced forming questions in English. By the end, he felt both mentally exhausted and exhilarated. You've done well today, Tom, Benny said as he jumped back onto the coffee table. Riddles are a great way to reinforce what you've learned while having fun. Thanks, Benny, Tom said, smiling. This was actually really helpful. I feel like I'm starting to remember things more easily. That's the idea, Benny said with a wink. Tomorrow we'll take your practice to the next level by having you talk to someone else. Be prepared. Tom's eyes widened. Someone else? Who? You'll see, Benny said cryptically before leaping off the table and walking toward the window. As Tom sat down to review the words and phrases from the day's lesson, he couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nervousness about what Benny had planned next. The morning sunlight poured into the living room as Tom sat at the table, nervously tapping his pencil against his notebook. Benny had been unusually cryptic about today's lesson, and Tom wasn't sure what to expect. Benny strolled in with his usual calm demeanor, his green eyes sparkling with mischief. Good morning, Tom, he greeted. Good morning, Benny, Tom replied. So, who am I talking to today? Benny hopped onto the table and sat down. Today you'll practice your English with some of my friends. Your friends? Tom asked, raising an eyebrow. Before Benny could answer, there was a soft knock at the door. Tom stood up, feeling a wave of nervous excitement. He opened the door to find two cats waiting outside. The first was a sleek black cat with golden eyes. Hello, Tom, she said in a smooth British accent. My name is Luna. Benny told me all about you. The second cat, a ginger tabby with a cheerful expression, stepped forward. Hi there. I'm Max, he said in a bright Australian accent. Good to finally meet you. Tom blinked, struggling to process the scene. You've got to be kidding me, he muttered. Benny smirked. Tom, meet my friends. They're here to help you practice listening to different accents and speaking in a real conversation. Tom stepped aside, letting the two cats in. Luna leapt gracefully onto the couch, while Max settled on the armchair. Benny remained on the coffee table, clearly enjoying Tom's bewilderment. Let's start with something simple, Benny said. Tom, ask Luna a question. Tom hesitated, then asked, You? What is your favorite color? Luna smiled. My favorite color is blue, she replied. What about you, Tom? What's your favorite color? Green, Tom said, glancing at Benny. Lovely choice, Luna said, her voice warm and encouraging. Now, Max, Benny instructed, ask Tom a question. Max's tail twitched with excitement. All right, mate. Tom, where do you live? I live in this apartment, Tom answered, his confidence growing slightly. Nice place, Max said, looking around. And how long have you been learning English? Tom scratched his head. A few months, but it's been hard. You're doing great, Luna chimed in. The more you practice, the better you'll get. The conversation continued, with Benny guiding the flow and ensuring Tom practiced different types of questions and answers. Each cat spoke with a distinct accent and used phrases that challenged Tom to listen carefully and respond appropriately. Luna asked, "What do you like to do for fun?" Tom replied, "I like to read books and watch movies." Max followed up with, "What's your favorite movie?" I like action movies," Tom said, feeling more comfortable as the conversation progressed. Benny occasionally stepped in to correct Tom's grammar or pronunciation, but he kept the atmosphere light and supportive. By the end of the session, Tom felt a surprising sense of accomplishment. Speaking with Luna and Max had been intimidating at first, but their friendly attitudes made it easier to relax and enjoy the practice. "Thank you both," Tom said, genuinely grateful. "This was really helpful." "Our pleasure," Luna said, leaping down from the couch. "Yeah, mate," Max added. "Keep at it, and you'll be speaking like a pro in no time." As the two cats left, Benny turned to Tom with a satisfied expression. "You did well today." Conversations are one of the best ways to improve your language skills. Tom nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Thanks, Benny. I didn't think I could do it, but I guess I can." "Of course you can," Benny said, his tone firm. "Tomorrow we'll tackle something practical shopping phrases. Be ready." Tom laughed. "With you as my teacher, I don't think I have a choice," Benny smirked, his green eyes gleaming. "You're finally catching on." The next morning, Tom was eager to start the day's lesson. Benny had promised something practical, and after yesterday's success chatting with Luna and Max, Tom felt ready for a new challenge. Benny paced in front of the coffee table, looking uncharacteristically serious. "Good morning, Tom," he said. "Good morning, Benny," Tom replied, grabbing his notebook. "What are we doing today?" "We're going on a market adventure," Benny announced, his tail swishing with excitement. "You'll learn phrases and vocabulary related to shopping. Imagine you're at a market and I'll guide you through different scenarios." Tom leaned forward, intrigued. "Sounds useful. Let's do it." Benny gestured toward an imaginary stall in the corner of the room. "Welcome to Benny's Market. Here you can buy fruits, vegetables, and other goods. Let's start with something simple, asking about prices. Repeat after me. How much is this?" "How much is this?" Tom repeated. "Good. Now use that phrase to ask me about something." Benny pointed to an apple sitting on the table. Tom cleared his throat. "How much is this apple?" Benny grinned. "The apple is $1. Now, here's another useful phrase. I would like use it to say what you want to buy." "I would like an apple," Tom said, feeling the sentence flow naturally. "Perfect," Benny exclaimed. "Now, let's try something more complex. What if you want to buy more than one item? You can say, I would like 2 apples and a banana. Give it a try." Tom hesitated for a moment before saying, "I would like 2 apples and a banana." "Excellent. Now, let's practice paying. When you're ready to pay, you can say, 'Here is the money,' or 'Can I pay with a card?'" Tom repeated the phrases, imagining himself at a real market. "Here is the money. Can I pay with a card?" Benny nodded approvingly. "Very good. Now, let's switch roles. You're the seller and I'm the customer." Tom grinned as Benny walked up to the imaginary stall. "Good morning," Benny said. "How much is this orange?" Tom thought for a moment. "The orange is $2, he replied. "Great," Benny said. "I would like 2 oranges, please." Tom handed Benny the imaginary fruit. "Here you go," he said, improvising. "See, you're getting it," Benny said. "Let's add a few more items to your vocabulary. This," he pointed to a loaf of bread on the counter, "is bread. Repeat after me. This is bread. This is bread," Tom said. "And this," Benny continued, pointing to a bunch of grapes, "is a bunch of grapes. Say it." "This is a bunch of grapes," Tom repeated, scribbling the new words in his notebook. They spent the next 20 minutes running through different scenarios, practicing how to ask for items, discuss prices, and even handle mistakes. "What if I want to say, 'I don't have enough money'?" Tom asked. "You can say, 'I don't have enough money.' Can you lower the price?" Benny explained, adding, "It's also called bargaining. Try it. 'I don't have enough money. Can you lower the price?'" Tom repeated, grinning. By the end of the session, Tom felt more confident about using English in a practical setting. He had learned not only the vocabulary for shopping, but also how to navigate real-life situations. "That was really helpful, Benny," Tom said, closing his notebook. "I feel like I could actually go to a market and not panic." Benny smirked. "That's the idea. Tomorrow we'll play a game to review everything you've learned so far. Be prepared." Tom laughed. "With you as my teacher, I'm always prepared." Benny gave him an approving nod before leaping onto the couch. "Good, you're making progress, Tom. Keep it up." As Tom began to organize his notes, he couldn't help but feel grateful for Benny's unique teaching methods. He knew there was still a lot to learn, but for the first time, it didn't feel overwhelming. The next morning, Tom found Benny in the living room, sitting upright with a stack of flashcards spread out on the coffee table. Benny looked up as Tom entered, his green eyes gleaming with mischief. "Good morning, Tom," Benny said. "Good morning, Benny," Tom replied, eyeing the flashcards curiously. "What's all this?" "This," Benny said with a flourish of his paw, "is today's lesson. We're going to play a game of memory to review everything you've learned so far. It's time to see how well you can recall the words, phrases, and lessons we've covered." Tom nodded, a mix of excitement and nervousness bubbling inside him. "Okay, I'm ready. How does it work?" Benny gestured toward the cards. "Each card has a word or a phrase on one side. I'll describe something, and you'll have to find the corresponding card. If you get it right, you keep the card. If not, I'll give you a hint. Ready?" "Let's do it," Tom said, pulling up a chair. Benny flipped over the first card, revealing the word apple. "All right," Benny said, "here's your first clue. I'm red or green, and you can eat me." "What am I?" Tom thought for a moment before answering, "An apple." "Correct," Benny said, sliding the card toward Tom. "Now, here's another one. I'm tall and green, and I grow in the garden. What am I?" "A tree," Tom replied confidently. "Excellent," Benny said, revealing the next card, tree. The game continued, with Benny offering increasingly challenging clues. Some cards represented objects Tom had learned around the house, like chair and lamp, while others revisited vocabulary from the garden and market lessons. "What am I?" Benny asked, holding up a card that read refrigerator. "I'm in the kitchen, and I keep things cold." "The fridge," Tom exclaimed. "Very good," Benny said, pushing the card toward him. "You're doing well, Tom. Let's make it a bit harder." For the next round, Benny introduced phrases instead of single words. This phrase is useful when you want to ask about an object. "What is it?" Benny asked. Tom paused, thinking back to their previous lessons. "Is it what is this?" "Correct," Benny said, sliding the card toward him. The game became more dynamic as Benny added situational prompts. "Imagine you're at the market," Benny said. "You want to know how much something costs. What do you say? How much is this?" Tom answered, his confidence growing. "Exactly," Benny replied, holding up the card with the phrase. After nearly an hour of play, the table was littered with cards Tom had successfully earned. Benny leaned back, his tail swishing with satisfaction. "You've done very well, Tom," Benny said. "You've remembered most of what we've covered, and your responses are getting quicker." "Thanks, Benny," Tom said, smiling as he looked over the cards. "This game was actually really fun. It made me realize how much I've learned." "That's the point," Benny said with a wink. "Learning doesn't have to be boring. It's about practice, and games like this make it easier to stay motivated." As Tom began gathering the cards, Benny hopped onto the table and looked him in the eye. "Tomorrow we'll put all of this into action with a final challenge." "Be ready," Tom grinned. "A final challenge? Sounds intense." "It will be," Benny said, his voice teasing. "But I have no doubt you'll do great." Tom nodded, feeling a mix of anticipation and excitement for what was to come. Tom woke up with a mix of excitement and nerves. Today was the day Benny had been preparing him for the final challenge. Over the past several days, he had learned vocabulary, practiced phrases, and even held conversations with Benny's friends. Now it was time to put it all together. As he entered the living room, he found Benny waiting for him, seated majestically on the coffee table. "Good morning, Tom," Benny said, his voice calm but purposeful. "Good morning, Benny," Tom replied, sitting across from him. "So what's the challenge?" Benny's tail swished as he began to explain. "Today you'll face a real-world simulation. You'll go through a series of scenarios where you'll need to use everything you've learned, describing objects, asking questions, having conversations, and solving problems. Think of it as your graduation exam." Tom nodded, trying to keep his nerves in check. "All right, I'm ready. Let's do this." Benny leaped onto the floor and gestured to the living room. "Let's begin. Imagine you're at a store. I'm the shopkeeper. You want to buy an apple, a loaf of bread, and a bottle of water. Start by greeting me and asking how much they cost." Tom took a deep breath, then said, "Good morning. How much is the apple?" Benny smiled. "The apple is $1. "And how much is the bread?" Tom asked. "The bread is $2, Benny replied. Tom continued, "And how much is the bottle of water?" "The bottle of water is $1, Benny said. "Now tell me what you would like to buy." "I would like an apple, a loaf of bread, and a bottle of water," Tom said, feeling the words flow naturally. "Excellent," Benny said. "Now let's switch to another scenario." Benny led Tom to the kitchen. "Imagine you're hosting a guest who speaks English. Your guest is curious about your kitchen. Describe 3 objects in this room." Tom looked around, thinking carefully. "This is the refrigerator. It's big and white. This is the counter, where I prepare food. And this is the sink, where I wash dishes." "Very good," Benny said. "Now let's add some action. Imagine your guest asks you to water the plants in the garden. What do you say? Throung replied, I will water the plants in the garden. Benny nodded approvingly. Excellent. Let's move on to a more complex task. The next scenario took place in the living room. Benny gestured toward the couch. Imagine you're meeting someone for the first time. They ask you about your favorite hobby. What do you say? Tom hesitated for a moment before responding, I like to read books and watch movies. My favorite movies are action movies. Great answer, Benny said, his tone encouraging. Now, let's test your ability to handle a tricky situation. Imagine you're at a market and you don't have enough money to buy everything you want. How would you ask the seller to lower the price? Tom thought for a moment, then said, I don't have enough money. Can you lower the price? Perfect, Benny said, his tail flicking with approval. You've handled every scenario brilliantly so far. There's just one final task. Tom raised an eyebrow. Final task? Benny smirked. Imagine you're introducing yourself to someone new. Use everything you've learned to create a conversation. I'll be the stranger. Tom straightened up, ready for the challenge. Hello, my name is Tom. What's your name? Benny replied, My name is Benny. Nice to meet you, Tom. Where are you from? I'm from this city, Tom said. I live in an apartment with my cat. Who can talk? Benny chuckled. Very nice. What do you like to do for fun? I like to read books, watch movies, and learn English, Tom answered confidently. Fantastic, Benny said, his eyes gleaming with pride. You've done it, Tom. You've passed the final challenge with flying colors. Tom exhaled deeply, feeling a wave of relief and accomplishment wash over him. Thanks, Benny. I couldn't have done this without you. You're right about that, Benny said with a teasing grin. But the credit also goes to you. You worked hard and stayed committed. That's what matters. As Tom sat down to reflect on the journey, he realized how far he had come. Learning English no longer felt like an insurmountable task. With Benny by his side, he had discovered not just the language, but also a newfound confidence in himself. Tomorrow, Benny said, leaping onto the couch, we start the next phase of your learning. But for now, enjoy your victory. Tom laughed. Next phase? You never stop, do you? Not when there's more to learn, Benny replied, curling up on the couch. Tom smiled, feeling ready for whatever came next.